Today we're going to have a special topic on good governance, if it's feasible or if it's a myth in Nigeria and in Africa in general. But before we go into this topic, I would like to give our special guest a moment to introduce himself.
Well, my name is Omoyele Sowore. I'm a Nigerian, been a journalist, an activist, a pro-democracy campaigner for over 30 years in Nigeria. And I've been a university professor here, well, I was an adjunct professor for about 10 years in New York City, teaching post-colonial Africa history. And the most difficult introduction is calling myself a politician. But I prefer to remain with the title political activist, yes.
Okay, great. So, in 2006, you established a news agency. Did you establish this with a goal in mind that you wanted to kind of become an activist?
No, I was an activist before I came to Lagos. I was a student activist in my university days in the early 90s. So establishing a news agency wasn't planned the way it turned out. I was actually using that to respond to two things. One was my absence from what I consider to be the battlefront in Nigeria, having forced myself into self-exile in 1999. And secondly, it was my own weapon against corruption, because I was in those days finding a lot of information about offshore corruption by the new civilian regime. So these were the two ways I wanted to respond to it, and then it ended up becoming a big idea.
Wow.
And a global brand.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Great. So establishing this, and did you think that would have been a change in terms of helping to streamline the way that politics are played in Nigeria, and that also what made you to contest for the presidential election?
So I have been doing media work for several years before the election thing came. And the reason I contested was because I think I had the opportunity of doing some of the most powerful media work for Nigeria, in Nigeria, and the diaspora, exposing a lot of corruption, setting an agenda for good governance, covering elections, and breaking some of the most difficult news.
That would have been really a kind of a big challenge. Yes. I can imagine.
But I came to a conclusion after 2016, after doing this for 10 years, that even the best media in the world cannot bring about a better country if good people don't step up and occupy political office.
That's correct.
So that was what got me interested in political office. Otherwise, I used to hate partisan politics. I hated it with passion. So, but this was an opportunity I saw to change gear and also change my society by getting directly involved in governance. So that was what made me take the decision, or what you call a plunge, to get involved in partisan politics in 2018 and beyond.
So being an activist, then a journalist, then politician, did that kind of, help to shape your experience in helping to shape the political sort of beliefs in Nigeria and in Africa in general?
Well, let me talk about Africa. I've always been a Pan-Africanist because I was around towards the end of apartheid. And that was the last time almost all Africans were on the same page. Well, I won't say all, because some African nations did not support the eradication of apartheid as much as others. But Nigeria was center stage, involved in the struggle against apartheid. So, and that Pan-Africanism also shaped our students' experiences. We were student leaders who must have ideological leanings towards a Pan-African agenda. And that was where it all started for me. But I don't think that I was. I normally don't refer to myself as a journalist because I never went to journalism school, and never. I just found myself, reporting because I happened upon a bunch of crime scenes.
Oh wow!
What I say
So do you
in terms
think
of financial corruption.
Do you think maybe it's inborn? I mean, you're not a journalist, but you were able to take it on and really do good at it.
Well, I think one of the things I realized early as an activist is that you must be able to tell your own stories.
Right.
Otherwise, it will be told by someone else
That's correct.
who may not correctly decipher your agenda or your intentions. And people can go out there and also completely misinterpret what you stand for. So I've always told my own story. As student activists, we used to write lengthy press releases to explain ourselves. We used to write some propaganda materials against the school authorities and the government in Nigeria in those days, and we used to press a lot. We used to do a lot of press conferences. In doing those, you have to actually do your research and put out things that make sense to the public. So I guess that came from there. But I also had seen, or I saw the internet as it was imagined when I arrived in the US as a tool that could be used to kind of bypass what I found out to be derelict type of mainstream media reporting.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. In 2019, you began a movement that you named Revolution Now. And that movement kind of gained a significant attention in Nigeria, Africa, and in the world in general. And what were your goals behind that movement?
Well, maybe we just want to rewind a bit. Before 2019, we had set up a group known as Take It Back. And that was the movement that preceded our political party, the African National Congress, AAC, which is still in existence today. But by the time we were done with the election in 2019, it had become obvious that the political class in Nigeria are so caked in their ways of stealing elections, or even no longer organizing elections or organizing shambolic elections, that we needed to move a step further. And that was where the idea of having a revolution in Nigeria came about, and that was where the battle cry Revolution Now came from.
Wow.
Yes. Wow. So it was the Take It Back movement and the political party that started Revolution Now. And after the election, I came to the US a few times, I think twice, and then went back in July of 2019. And we started mobilizing the country for a revolution. We wanted a mass revolt.
Right.
And the day before, 2 days before the revolution revolt could happen, I was arrested in my hotel room in Lagos.
Right.
And flown to Abuja.
Right.
And detained incommunicado.
Wow.
But still, on the day of the planned revolution, which was August 5, over 20 states in Nigeria still came out.
Wow.
To have they have rallies and revolts across the country. And ever since then, the word revolution, which used to be alien to Nigerians, became introduced to the lexicon of Nigerians. In fact, over 5 million people searched the meaning of revolution on August 5, 2019 from Nigeria on Google.
That is just the interest alone.
They just want to find out what is revolution. Ever since then, I have a feeling that Nigeria started to barrel down on that trajectory of having a revolution.
Wow. Yes. So going back a little bit about your arrest, because they felt that that what you did was treason, and you battled out for almost 5 years or so.
Yes, correct.
And eventually you won. How do you feel about the victory that you actually got?
I didn't see it as victory. I see it as vindication. and the vindication that one, the revolution is necessary, and secondly, the fact that people need to understand that any form of oppression has to be fought with total resistance. And that was the vindication I had. I cannot see victory because we haven't won the war yet.
Right.
We're still at the battle stage.
Right.
Or stages.
So going back to the governance in Nigeria, democracy is what supposedly Nigeria is supposed to be practicing. What do you think are the challenges that we're facing that this democracy or democratic kind of government is not efficient in Nigeria as well as in Africa at large?
It's a very interesting question, considering that even the concept of democracy has become a mirage, even in America.
In America,
so
true.
And it is because I think, like every idea, democracy has passed through the 3 stages of every innovation. And the first stage is the excitement of innovation. And democracy didn't get to Africa as an innovation. It got to Africa as an imitation.
As an imitation.
Yes. So the people who embraced democracy in Africa, or who were pushing the agenda, just wanted Africans to imitate them.
So can you just give the viewers a little highlight on what you mean by imitation?
Well, because there are tenets of democracy. That democracy does not exist without meeting certain conditions. And all those conditions did not accompany the democracy that went to Africa. The African leaders didn't believe in free speech. They didn't believe in free and fair elections.
It's democracy.
Yes. And the US that was pushing it, so Europe, also did not care very much about the brand of democracy Africans were practicing, as long as it fulfilled the minimal condition for saying, okay, now we can do business with you.
That's interesting.
Yes. And
even though you were supposed to be the leaders of free speech and human rights.
Yes. They did not care about that. So, as it is the joke all over Africa, there was freedom of speech, but there was no freedom after speech. And that made a mess of democracy on the continent. And then there's supposed to be elections, and there's supposed to be term limits. And those ones were brazenly violated. In fact, in some cases, the US was behind some of, or Europe was behind some of the leaders that brazenly violated term limits. If you remember, in the 90s, the US was already willing to support Abacha from becoming a civilian head of state, setting up fake political parties. And Clinton was in power then.
Oh my
He had already signed off on Abacha becoming president before he died. So that would tell you, that explains what I meant by imitation. So the last stage is what I was referring to as the stages of the Tinubus of this world. I use that because it's a Nigerian comedian clan, democratic clan now. And what happens? Yes, what happens with this set of people is that they'll come and burn down the idea. And they are doing a fantastic job at burning down the idea of democracy.
Why?
Because of the violations of human rights, electoral sanctity.
Well, but I'm just surprised. Why are the US, the UN, not even bothered? If, in fact, there is a lot of lives that are at stake here, people are dying, there's hunger, I'm just, amazed.
Well, I think a lot of people are naive about the political and economic agenda of the West, the West doesn't see Africa as, or Africans as, people that are deserving of any kind of treatment, and as humans. That is why if a bush is burning, if a forest is burning on the continent of Africa, they would rather rescue the gorillas there
than the humans.
The humans.
Wow.
Yes. How many times have you seen anybody going from here who is not going to either visit
the safari
or the safari or the savannah to see animals, And when eventually they will go to our cities, it is to make us look pitiable. All economic policies that are sent our direction from here are to pauperize us. All the assistance that are offered to Africans end up in Western banks. Why are they pretending that they don't know why Africans are poor when leaders are stealing and putting in your bank accounts? The accountant, the teller, everybody know that these guys don't have a job, but they have $10 million, some of them have $1 billion.
And of course, there is the money laundering.
And Switzerland, of all places, helps to keep this money with a secret code.
Wow.
So why are you surprised that the West don't care about you? And it didn't happen now. They didn't care about you because that's how black people ended up here as slaves. And they just see us as commodities instead of as humans.
Wow.
And anything they throw there for in our direction is to keep that going.
Just to keep the momentum at that level.
Yes. And to keep a false momentum in motion.
Wow.
What we call plenty of motion, no movement.
So bringing it back to Nigerian scene, what would be your assessment when it comes to corruption and human rights in Nigeria? Because obviously there has been a lot of violations. What is your take on that?
Well, the thing about corruption is that I don't even know if Nigerian leaders can be described as corrupt.
Really?
As much as...
What would you describe them?
I think, they're just basically acting like animals who are depraved.
Wow.
People who have these instincts to just take more than ever they will more than they will ever need. So it's difficult to say that's corruption, because they're no longer engaging in bribery as such, but they're themselves handling everything. So before to get a service, you might need to give some money to somebody.
Right.
But the person who are supposed to take a bribe are the ones carrying out the service
themselves.
So I'll give you an example. It used to be that there were smugglers smuggling goods across the border in Nigeria. And then the customs will have to take a bribe from them. But now the customs are the ones smuggling.
Oh, they're the one now that
is smuggling. They don't need the smugglers anymore. So it is referred to then as primitive accumulation, which is worse than corruption in the pecking order of greed.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So with this description that you've given, the leaders in Africa, would you say any country at all in Africa is doing well?
I've heard about Botswana.
Heard?
Yes, but I've never been there.
Okay.
That they have been able to manage their resources and wealth by democratizing their wealth. Because that's what I wanted to mention earlier about democracy. That without the democratization of well-being, wealth, you can't have democracy. True democracy. So I heard that they mind their emotions. They transparently declare to their people how much they made from it.
Wow.
They use the proceeds of that money to invest in education and infrastructure. And like I said, I heard they are doing well. But I haven't been to Botswana before. I don't know what the social political atmosphere is out there.
Wow.
So I just want to put that out as a caveat.
Right. Since, it's been almost 4 years, if not 4 years, that the NSAS ended in Nigeria, which took a lot of lives. Has there been any progress in terms of police brutality and the force that is used on human?
Well, it's mixed. Because I was there, in fact, we started NSAS in 2020. I was the person who led the first NSAS protest in Abuja.
Wow.
To the police headquarters before it caught fire over the country. And I said there were immediate gains. The police were really scared, and they emptied a lot of their cells. There was some kind of cognitive understanding that people could revolt against a powerful entity like the Nigerian police, an armed entity. And it's very rare all over the world for people to revolt against an armed organization like the police. They will typically revolt against leadership, and an army or police would then try to create peace. But this time around, they went after the most notorious police force in the world.
Wow.
And then you have to give props to all those young people who came out and sustained that. But the NSAS had a problem, and it was that the people who later saw themselves as NSAS connoisseurs, especially celebrities, didn't understand that NSAS was a revolution.
Wow.
That came on a platter of gold. And in an attempt to benefit from the fame and some fortune that came with it, they robbed NSAS of a revolutionary opportunity. And that was the problem, because the struggle for that revolution was the day after the army came and shot at the youths in front of the toll gate. There needed to have been a follow-up the day after.
So with this shooting, though, is there any justice? Is there any justice that is given to those that lost their lives?
No, well, not yet. But you see, the kind of justice that is going to happen with regards to NSAS might also be of different variants and formats. Some of it poetic, and it's going to take a long while. Some of the injustices that was carried out by police or against civilians will not be rectified until some of those policemen are in their 80s. Some of them on their way to their grave. Just like the police or the white supremacists were feeling good in Alabama,
right,
about bombing churches. We saw that some of them weren't caught until the 90s. 2000s.
Right. Nigeria has how many?
That's exactly tribes. Where I'm headed. That tribe is going to be called the tribe of the oppressed.
Wow.
Yes. And it is to say, look, regardless of where I come from, as long as I'm oppressed, you're oppressed, it doesn't matter anymore where we come from. Because the division that we've had with regards to tribe and religion are all artificial. It's just the same old tactic of divide and conquer. At the end of the day, hunger and starvation doesn't recognize the Hausa person.
True.
Or Igbo.
True.
And when we all realize that that is the goal, liberation,
but
we'll become one tribe of the oppressed and we'll fight back.
Right.
And we'll get our liberation as fast as we can ever imagine.
So let me ask an interesting question.
Yes.
During election, that is when the leaders usually come very close to the people, the masses.
Yes.
However, they bring these little peanuts, 2,000 naira here, 5,000 naira here, and give to these same people who are trying to come together, right, to fight this corruption. Why do you think they continue to do the same thing, collecting this money from these corrupt individuals and governments? And the result is still the same.
Well, one thing we must recognize is that Nigeria was designed like this over time. If Nigerian leaders walk into the US today, and I've often said this, and they take over New York State for 6 months, you will no longer have public transportation in 6 months.
Wow.
Your schools will be shuttered. There will be no heating during the winter. Are you getting me?
Wow. This is how terrible
yes,
their
the New
leadership
York
is.
subway will be shut down because we are dealing with the characteristics of an organized group of persons who are holding their nation and citizens to ransom.
Wow.
Yes, it's actually an organized crime political family that is running Nigeria. And that's why you see there's a continuous recirculation of some names keeps coming up, regardless of which year, which election, which time of the day, because it's a crime family.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And until a lot of people don't recognize that, it is the reason why they put a lot of work into turning Nigerians into what they have become.
So you mean they turn it upside down for their own personal benefits?
Exactly. Because what they did is to take away from. It's just like, a child is entitled to a cake. You take away the cake and then you put it on the ceiling and you start dropping crumbs up there.
Wow.
And over time, the child is grateful for getting the crumbs, even though the child is entitled to a full cake.
Wow. So your
it's
perspective,
a whole lot of psychological engineering too.
Wow. So from your perspective, do you think that good governance is ever achievable in Nigeria?
It is. If we don't give up, because Nigeria still has one chance, one opportunity, and there are still a lot of good Nigerians out there who have not put in their best, particularly diaspora. And interestingly, Nigeria is still in existence today economically because of the diaspora community. Because you're pushing more money than you get from the national revenue or the budget or loans, everything combined together. The diaspora pushes in over 50 to 60, if not $100 billion
wow.
into Nigeria every year. If they can come together and use part of that to fund change or to push for real fundamental change, of which they too have to cure themselves of some primordial sentiments. Because whatever is in Nigeria is also replicated somehow.
Okay.
In diaspora.
Yes.
Wow,
interesting.
Yes. Then that push will lead to a shove.
Wow.
And that will bring about the next stage of great governance.
Wow.
Because interestingly, there are a lot of people who are competent in the diaspora. And there are a number of people who are also honest at home. But they just need an opportunity to rise.
A support system.
Yes. And when that happens, you'll be shocked at what Nigeria could become in a short time. Yes, in a very brief period of time.
So how can Africa as a whole, not just Nigeria now, because it looks like what is happening in Nigeria is replicating in many African countries. how can they come together to seek, and not just to seek, but to demand for this change?
You see, Africans that we know that Nigeria is a big brother to no longer exist. Nigeria used to be the big brother of Africa. In fact, we still provide electricity to some of the African countries.
And yet,
Benin Republic, Togo,
wow.
I think Niger, some of our neighbors, we still give them electricity. But the truth is that some Africans have also moved past Nigeria. I was in Ghana 2 weeks ago. I'm not praising the Ghanaian government because they're doing their own rubbish still there. With clamping down on the citizens, and so I saw some of the guys in jail.
Wow.
But in terms of, development metrics, Ghana is doing better than Nigeria.
And Nigeria used to be the giant of Africa.
It's now giant of failure.
Oh wow, giant of failure.
Yes. I've been to Kenya. Kenya is doing better than Nigeria. I've been to Rwanda. Despite war, Rwanda has been better than Nigeria. I've been to South Africa. South Africa has been better than Nigeria. I've been to Ethiopia. Despite war, Ethiopia has been better than Nigeria. In fact, the entire Ethiopian airline is making it off of Nigeria.
True. Wow. Yes.
But Nigeria today do not have enough per capita seats on all the private airlines in the country.
Wow.
That's why the supply cannot cope with the demand. That's why prices are so. But you can imagine Ethiopia making it off of us, and we can make it.
Wow.
So I've been to Senegal. Senegal is doing better than Nigeria. I've been to Egypt. Egypt is doing better than Nigeria. At this point, I am not in any way discussing their form of government. Before you say, maybe we should try military rule. I don't support military rule, yes. But I'm just talking about development metrics. I've not been to Tunisia or Morocco, but I've heard great news about Tunisia and Morocco. And Morocco just launched some of the best rail line.
Wow.
I haven't heard Uganda. It's been better than Nigeria. So, in all, the Nigeria of Big Brother
is no longer the Big Brother.
Has become a failed
wow.
uncle.
Wow. So currently in Nigeria, there's a very steep economic hardship. A lot of hunger. A lot of people are complaining about that, no jobs.
Yes.
How can this issue be tackled?
So we have to understand certain things, and some of it is so basic but very fundamental. Nigeria is never going to make it as an industrial hub, as a prosperous nation, without electricity.
Yes.
That's the first thing that everybody must come to understand.
But how is it an issue if they are supplying electricity to other countries?
Well, those countries were supplying electricity to don't need much from the electrical grid. But it's also possible that, being who we are, we sabotage ourselves and help others. We don't forget that it's the Nigerian army that ended the war in Sierra Leone and Liberia. And those ones are also somehow on the path to recovery. But the same Nigerian army cannot defeat Boko Haram because generals are benefiting from the insurgents. Yes. So you can understand there's also a whole lot of self-inflicted injuries all over the place as far as Nigeria is concerned. Yes.
Wow. So given that, with all these difficulties, if you were to be the president of Nigeria today, how would it solve or even improve, you know, the situation or the current situation or condition of the country?
I have done a lot of studies, but as academic, I've also undertaken a tour of Nigeria, particularly in 2018 and 2019. And I've also realized that there are certain things you hear about Nigeria that are not true.
They're not true.
One of it is that Nigeria is complex, completely false.
Wow. I've also heard that.
Yes. Second is that Nigeria is big. It's not. Nigeria is actually not as big as the state of Alaska in the US.
Right.
Yeah, it's just Nigeria is just 25% bigger than Texas. California is half of Nigeria. So then you go to solutions. There are two solutions that Nigeria needs to grow. First is foundational. And the way Nigeria was set up as a business. You have to dismantle that. It has to be set up as a nation.
As a nation.
So it never quite became a nation. And how do you solve that? You have to think out with the constitution. You have to go and offend some things that we don't like to talk about, like the Civil War. We have to really go back and look at it, accept that we're wrong, apologize, and start to connect and develop on those platforms. We have to take control of some of our resources from both multinationals and individuals to whom they have been betrothed.
Wow.
The second aspect, set of things, are institutional. And part of it is what I was talking about, electricity. Massive investment in it. You got to pick Nigeria out of darkness.
I mean, the world is going on solar now.
Yes.
So I don't know what
is it's so easy to do that. We have to, get into an energy mode that is crazy. So if a country that has 200 million people got nothing to do with 5,000 megawatts of electricity, our starting point is 100,000.
Wow.
Yes. Not 5,000. South Africa is 60,000. They're expanding. And the moment we get that, we'll get back on the industrial scale.
But we must have to fight these monsters.
Yes, monsters are the easiest people to fight because they need darkness to operate. And when you bring light, half of them will be taken out.
Wow.
It's just like when we were growing up, you and I, if you ever grew up in a village, you know how village people always believe that there are more witches in the village? The reason is simple. It's darkness. This is what they listen to at night. How do the same village people go to Lagos and they start becoming witches?
They're no longer witches.
Exactly. So I'm just using that as a very simple analogy for people who might be listening to it. You ask yourself, the witches in the village, when they come to America, how come they're no longer witches?
They just disappear.
They can't just go back to meetings. Anyways, that's on a lighter mode. If you bring light, a lot of darkness will disappear. And the bad guys need darkness to keep operating. And then you invest in infrastructure. But before infrastructure, education is key, because the next generation that will take Nigeria to the so-called promised land must be educated. They can't
right now, the infrastructure of education is very poor.
Well, the truth is this: education under a great leadership can benefit from technology. I have said it several times. If I'm president of Nigeria, I will abandon the classroom mode of education. I will engage in mass education. And it has to be technologically trained. Every village, anywhere you can watch soccer, in Nigeria. There's nowhere in Nigeria today that you cannot watch European soccer.
Oh, wow.
Yes, or what they call the English soccer, Premier League, as they call it. Any village that can have it can also have a classroom in front of that TV screen. We did it during COVID. Everybody was going to school at home or from home. People are going to work from home now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a whole lot that's some part into that. It also means that you, who's a doctor in New Rochelle, can treat somebody in the village in Nigeria with technology. It's called telemedicine. Simple.
Doctor in philosophy, by the way.
Yes, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So, all these things there's a lot of things that we can benefit from now.
Right.
That weren't there before. And that is why leadership is key. And not just leadership, a digital thinking new leadership.
Mm.
Because when the people of UAE wanted to make progress, they had to set aside the derelict old archaic leadership. Brought in some new guys who went to school abroad, some of them schooled in UK, Europe, and said, look, this is the desert. We want to turn it around. An interesting thing about Nigeria is that it's going to be the most interesting place to develop.
So, I mean...
because there's just not much to do.
Right.
It's
but
just
let me ask you though.
Connecting grids, developing them, and yes, fighting the bad guys.
Right.
Yes. And those of us, I don't like to brag about it, but I have not done anything else but fighting bad guys my entire life.
Well, and that is actually where I was trying to go.
Yeah.
That it seems to me that everybody comes with a solution, but nobody's actually carrying out that solution. So what could be the next step? Because it's not just a one-man fight.
Yeah.
It's everybody's fight.
Yes. You see, don't let anybody lie to you that one man cannot change the world.
One man.
A man with a vision. A man with a mission. A man with intellect. A man with character. Or a woman. Can change anywhere. And then they will inspire multitudes. Very soon, America is going to celebrate what they call Thanksgiving. What do you think they are celebrating? A few men
that
took action in the history of their country. And they haven't forgotten them. So had those people not taken action, you and I would not be in America today.
True.
Why do we have Martin Luther King? One man who stood up and said, look, I have a dream. And that dream resonates, reverberates till today.
But that one man was killed.
Yes.
Nigerians or any Nigerian willing to get to that part.
That's what I'm telling you. We are sitting here together. I'm just coming from Nigeria. There's nothing else, like I said, I've done in my life that put my life on the line to change the social, economic, and political condition of our country. Am I the only person? No. But I have done my part.
Right.
And I continue to do my part. And what is probably lacking is also a population of those who may not have the same strength, who pull their strength together to pull us out of the doldrums. Because that is why there were 1 million persons in Washington, D.C. to listen to the Have a Dream speech.
So do you think these Nigerians who will come together, maybe one man, will come from diaspora, or do you think?
Well, diaspora is how we describe those of us who have taken up a career in traveling out of the country. The real diaspora is not supposed to be Nigerians who are in exile. Our diaspora is supposed to be our brothers and sisters who identify with us and as us. That's what is supposed to be diaspora. And these include African Americans, Cubans, Dominicans who somehow want to go back to Africa.
But even with that,
But the diaspora what we call diaspora,
right?
it's not supposed to be diaspora. But I don't understand what you mean. It's like those of us who are somehow run away,
Right.
are we willing to help? And I think yes, that is going to happen. But as I mentioned earlier, we also have to cure ourselves of the primordial sentiments that we had before we left home. I've often said this: if you are foolish in Nigeria, it doesn't matter where you go, you'll be foolish.
Let's be foolish.
Yes. And I'm not saying to insult anybody,
Right.
but I've seen it practically when people behave that it's like they left Nigeria, but Nigeria didn't leave them. So, regarding how they look at life sentimentally. But there are also a lot of Nigerians who have the education, who have the exposure,
Right.
who have the competence to do what is right. But they need a space to. It's just like Nigerians who come here or go to Europe or find themselves elsewhere, and 2 weeks later, they're flourishing. And they've been in Nigeria for 40 years. Nothing has happened because the conditions around them did not allow them to flourish. But we must create a Nigeria where Nigeria can flourish in Nigeria.
Right.
And Nigerians who want to come back can flourish within Nigeria.
Right.
And do you know which country ever did that? India.
Right.
And it was when they married the returnees to those at home who want to make this happen that India became a superpower.
Wow.
That is how technology that used to be in California, Silicon Valley,
Right.
half of it returned to India.
Mm-hmm.
But India had to create a condition for them, an environment for people to return.
Right.
Ghana is doing that on a smaller scale. There's a lot of small businesses in Ghana, real estate businesses in Ghana that is flourishing because they provided what ought to be happening in Nigeria is what is happening in Ghana. As we're speaking now, they have a year of return event they do every year in Accra. All these African American musicians, comedians, stars, everybody's returning home. And what is home? And where is home? Ghana.
Wow.
Yes. So nobody's even asking for outsiders to come, but for Nigerian government to provide a Nigeria where Nigerians can flourish. That is what has not happened.
Wow. Well, going back to the diasporans in the state or the diaspora, it's not those that came with asylum, looking for a better life. These could be Cuban, African American. Some of them don't see themselves as Africans. They don't even identify.
You will be shocked. So I was in Brazil, I think some 8 years ago. And the Orisha, people who identify as Orisha worshippers, they've become the third largest denomination in Brazil.
Wow.
Outside of the Catholics, and I think there's another, maybe they're Protestants in Brazil, but the people who are, so a lot of people identifying. But what you must recognize and accept is that nobody is going to go back to a home that is not welcoming.
Right.
Even if genetically, they say you are from Nigeria, when Nigerians are running away from Nigeria, who is going to want to go back? Which outsider is going to want to go back to Nigeria?
True.
So a lot of people that typically travel to Jamaica, travel to Ghana, Guyana, these are people that ought to be trooping to Nigeria every year. Because a lot of them, even through the Ancestry.com DNA processing, identify majority of people here as people from Nigeria.
Right.
But look, who wants to go back to Nigeria when all you see is death and destruction and disease every day?
Wow. You mentioned something about denomination that kind of, brought my interest on that. Do you think religion also has some kind of impediment
Completely.
on the growth of
Absolutely.
African nation.
Absolutely. Whomever brought religion to the continent of Africa did us dirty. And I have said this, and I know it's controversial, because I've seen people say, "Oh, well, I voted for you, but you said something negative about religion." I'm not saying anything negative about religion. I'm saying the truth about religion. And it was met, the kind of religion that I have seen in most African countries, it was brought to numb the mind of Africans. It's, I don't know how to describe it. And because I was born a Christian, but I haven't been to church in so many years. I mean, I've been to church to socialize, and I've been to church to preach to people for political reasons.
Okay.
But I see that as, socializing politically. But I just no longer believe in organized religion, because I've never seen any continent in the world in which religion have pushed people back into Stone Age than the continent of Africa. And a lot of people didn't see this for a long time.
But if you look
But
at
I
the
think
religion
that-
here,
Yeah,
right, they practice religion. There's Catholic, there's different kind of denomination here. But in Nigeria as well, right? So if they're practicing it here differently, then why is it different in Africa?
because when I was talking about democracy earlier, I was talking about the brand of democracy that I went to Africa. And we're
The
talking
imitation,
about, yes,
as they call it.
I think this is also an imitation of religion. But where I want to be very clear is that I don't think religion has any imitation. I think religion is the same for every. It's something that is meant likely for mind control, whether it's in America or Europe. And you discover that the I saw a list of the most religious countries in the world today somewhere. And Nigeria has a very interesting but very debilitating position beside Djibouti, Somalia.
Wow.
So there is a correlation between the most religious countries in the world and poverty.
And poverty.
So I don't think that God created religion to come and make people poor. If God really created religion.
So you feel that it's man-made?
Man created God in Nigeria.
Mm.
That's why the Nigerian God doesn't get upset.
Wow.
When the pastors are committing the most egregious crimes, stealing from members, lying to them, deception, killing when it's necessary. Every sin, all the 10 commandments, there's nowhere I've seen it violated more than in Nigeria. See, there are 11,000 positions from the president to councillors in Nigeria. You can rarely find a public office holder in Nigeria that is not religious. But these are the most godless people you could meet on the surface of the earth.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Interesting.
On Friday, the mosque is filled up with public officials. On Sunday, this church is filled up with, they're all raising up their head and their hands in direction of a God that they have no respect for.
Wow. And so as the people too. Who else
They are the
suffer?
people. So I think that what I then I knew this since I was 9 years old. That it's, there's a joint decision between the leaders of the churches and the political leaders to use religion to keep people just numbed. So it doesn't matter how bad you treat them. Religion is there to say, don't worry, just keep faith. You're gonna end up.
But it looks like a lot of folks also coming out to speak about this
Well,
act of
Yes.
pastors or
I
rabbis.
understand. So I was going to say that social media or technology, like every other thing, became the nemesis of religion in Nigeria. So people can now really question religion because there's substantial evidence. Before it used to be circumstantial evidence, but now it's substantial.
Mm.
I grew up in a village that had over 6 churches, up to 8. Now I heard it's about 10 or more.
Wow.
Nobody has been healed in any church that I know before.
That's my belief as well.
It is the guys who don't go to church that everybody rushes to. They call them herbalists.
Wow.
They're the ones healing everybody. People have malaria, cancer, everybody goes. They may not be able to properly diagnose it, but it's the guys who don't go to church that, including the church people, they go to them in the night.
They go to them in the night.
Yes. So,
that's interesting.
so I knew this since I was 9 years old.
Wow.
Yes.
Because you see them going there?
Well, of course. I think I've always been very inquisitive. And I think that's the reason why religion somehow doesn't allow people to question it. Because they know if you question things early in life, you probably discover that most of it is a ruse. Yes.
Wow. Interesting. Really interesting. So there's this saying that in every fight and struggles, there's always this sacrifice, right? That one give. What are these sacrifices that you have made?
I don't want to sit down here and be saying, I cut my finger, or like I sacrificed my brother on the altar and was smothered so that the God of Abraham can be happy. No. I think that I take my life one day at a time. I put in the best. Like I said, I put myself down on the firing line as much as I can. I take some of the most dangerous decisions possible. Sometimes I don't even know how dangerous those decisions are until I find myself on the other side of the race and discover when I look back or like gather intelligence or information. But I think in terms of sacrifice, I don't think it's necessary to count them until you attain victory.
Okay.
Yes. And sometimes maybe I will never find out because maybe I'll be gone and people will realize, oh, he did so much. Yeah. But I won't be able to look back. But I often say something, if there's life after death, I'm going to be going after these Nigerian leaders.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll
be tormenting them. I won't want to stay in heaven or hell. I just say to whoever is in charge, put me right back to work and have some guys to go after.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very strong.
Yeah.
Feeling about what is going on.
Yeah, because if you look at it, life can be completely easy. You and I don't even need to, one conversation that we don't have, especially out here, is how badly we want to go back home.
Yeah, people do say that.
Yeah.
Right?
But
people do say that. But there's no action.
Yeah. No, well, which actions do you want to take? A lot of people have tried to go back home, but it's not like they're going to put a step into the country first. Sometimes it's through investments. People build houses, they just go back home and discover not a block is in the foundation. They didn't, people have made investments that were wiped out, not necessarily by fraud, but by the system. People have made a lot of sacrifices, but if you ask, a lot of people would rather be back home than be here. A lot of people are doing 2-3 jobs here. Their lives are miserable. Families are being torn apart. All those guys who let their wives come to Canada or who let their husband come to Canada, they will never see them again.
Wow.
Yes.
So isn't it time for these Nigerians to come together to deal with this situation?
Well,
if you're miserable, you're not happy, right? But you have a country where you come from.
Where you could be happy, by the way.
Right.
Yes. Because I'll tell you, and I hope my wife never watched it. I came back last Saturday.
Pay attention.
Yes. And there I was living. I was miserable for just one reason. Just one. I look at the temperature and for 10 days, and I knew it would be 51
That was
degrees.
it.
And I'm coming from, no matter how bad you hate Nigeria, you're going to be warm for 12 months in a year. The coldest you get is probably 75 degrees. And that's what they call rainy season. That's the time you go put on your uncle's sweater, is it called sweater? Yes. This heavy wool that they don't wash when you have malaria. That's about the only time. Just weather alone.
It's very depressive.
Then the 6 months, we're starting out now. We're never going to get back to, except something, maybe we'll get 1 or 2 weeks between now and May next year. That is maybe 75, 80 degrees. But we're not getting back to 90 degrees until ending of May.
6 months or so.
6 months from, it's more than 6 months. Because we still have November,
Right.
December to go. December is going to be freaking cold. January is cold. That's just weather alone. And trust me, it's depressing. Clinically depressing. So it's also unhealthy.
Right.
For the mind and body.
Right.
Yeah.
So how would you say your family have supported you in your journey?
I don't want to praise my family too much so it doesn't get into their heads. But I'm blessed with a great family. My wife, and my kids who grew up without me. My kids were about to hit the teenage years when I was arrested, and I didn't get back until my daughter was 17.
Wow.
She'll be 18 next year. And that was a very crucial period of daddy being around. And my wife just did a fantastic job of covering up for me.
Wow.
That's the best way to describe it.
Wonderful.
So I don't know how best to thank her.
Would you say that is some motivation to continue to fight?
No, it's a tough thing, because no matter how people tolerate the absence of their loved ones, they always wish you're around. And the motivation must get to a point of responsibility too.
Right.
Where I have to practically, engage in division of labor.
Right.
I have to drive kids to places. I realized how much of an Uber driver my wife was since I came back. Yes, always drive me here, drive me there, picking up people in the middle of the night. So it's too much for one person.
Wow.
So the challenge is trying to find balance, because what I'm doing is very important.
Right.
And what they want is also crucial.
Right.
With its presence.
Right.
And you can't, I'm like a soldier. I have to fight. And fighting means I have to be absent for a while.
So when you got married to your wife, did she know about this aspect of you fighting for justice for the masses, or is something that caught her unaware?
I don't think she knew a bit. I met her here.
Okay.
She knew a bit about me having fought as a student, but I don't think she calculated how deeply involved I was.
Wow.
Because I got married in 2004. And I was only away maybe for 2 weeks, a month every year until 2018. Even when I was in Sahara, I was always around.
Wow.
So, but it was when I got arrested that it felt like the lid fell off. And
that came to kind of
realize, who the heck did I marry?
Get married to?
And this guy never told me how bad things were. She probably knew to some extent that I was in the business of offending powerful people,
Wow.
but she didn't calculate. It was because she was not the kind of person. She didn't like politics. Even when I ran for office the first time, she warned me never to use her picture in my campaign, and I
She
never.
wanted to start it back.
She's like, just do your madness, your shenanigans. I don't want to be part of it. I just want to have kids and raise them. So, yeah, but I think only she can tell the depth of it. But one thing that stood clearly out was that she probably learned one or two things from me. She became a better activist than I thought anybody could be when I was arrested.
Wow.
She was a lobbyist.
Wow.
With the U.S. Congress.
Wow.
She spoke the best. She made the most sense about my incarceration.
Wow.
She was on CNN, every international station in this country.
Wow.
CBS Evening News. Every day she was out there doing a better job than I thought she could have done. Nice. That initial confusion that I thought would overshadow her ability to deal with my incarceration.
Right.
Especially considering that it wasn't predictable. I was quite impressed at how she handled it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what legacy do you hope to leave for the future generation of Nigeria and Africa in general?
There are questions I no longer answer. And any question that makes me sound like a motivational speaker, I just say, you know what, the question will answer itself. I think it's up to the next generation to define that. Because, the landscape for determining and defining legacy is also changing. We have the whole new generation now. And they're different.
Wow.
So they may not look at things the way we look at it.
Right.
They may not even look at the future from the point of legacy. Maybe they're looking at the future from the point of devices. When I say devices, their own devices. Not this physical device only, but their own devices.
Wow. Wonderful. Well, do you have the final word to say to our viewers?
Well, what can I say to you viewers? It's just a pleasure being back on US soil. I've been back since March, by the way, and I've been back to Nigeria twice since then. Gotten into more trouble, but it's my hope that one day we all can unite and just walk through this all together. And I'm sure that if we decide that today that unity of purpose is our lot, and we work on it, enhance it, and the oppressor will be on their back heels. It's just one thing I hope for, and will happen sooner than later.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Unity of the oppressed.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you, viewers, for taking the time and the moment to listen to this wonderful talk with our guest today, Sowore. And we hope that you continue to join the Addy Talk Show, continue to subscribe to our channels, and we'll continue to give you good topics and good conversation that come from the heart. Thank you so much.